Hey everybody, thanks for listening in today. I'm your host Mythlorn, and this is the first podcast interview for Myth Writes. We're super excited to have today's guest with us, Vixie. Vixie is a veteran DM for D&D and an up-and-coming novelist. Welcome to our program. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm known as Vixie, but you can find me on Twitter as Vixvox3. I'm also known as Fiona through the World of Warcraft role-playing community. And you can also find me at Patreon at Fiona's Treasure Chest and Ko-fi at kofi.com/Vixvox.
Fantastic. So D&D has been a big part of your life for a long time, from what I can gather here. How long have you considered yourself a creative, and what are your end goals for that creativity?
Oh, geez. If I wanted to say how long I consider myself creative, I'd say about 6 years. But technically, I've been doing it a lot longer. The first stories I've written was a one paragraph long sequel to a story my dad read me at age 4, and
That's
this is totally
amazing.
gonna this is totally gonna age me. But the first story was a paragraph long thing I wrote on Lotus Works.
That's amazing. I love it. All right, so obviously that creativity has been a big part of your life, and it's really important to you. So how would you say like you have legacy goals? Because everybody, when they've got the creative side, right, and they want to see an end goal to that as a legacy they leave in the world when everything's said and done.
Well, I think about how in middle school I had started collecting the Redwall novels, Brian Jakes, I believe it's Jakes, um, and how I still have a lot of those books in my collection. I think about how I still have some of my first edition Legend of the Five Rings books, and I read those all the time. So the legacy I'd like to leave is to create something maybe for role playing, maybe a novel that is treasured by a reader for a long, long time, where they have that yellowed page, dog-eared to hell not book just hanging on their shelf.
I think that's really great, and oh my gosh, I still have all the Redwall books.
You know what?
It
You and me both.
it makes just creativity in your life and having that fantasy, that role play, that escape, that experience of life inside life is just incredible, and it can't really be replaced. So I think that's a super
Hmm.
admirable goal, especially the fact that you don't just want to create a novel for yourself. You want to give people the tools to bring their own reality into existence, and I think that really rocks. So good on you. Do you have any projects on the go right now, like anything in particular that you're working on?
Besides the Ko-fi account and the Patreon, I'm currently running a Pathfinder Second Edition campaign, which is pretty good, I'll say. I'm enjoying it, and I'm also creating a one of the big projects that I have going into the new expansion for World of Warcraft is a kind of a journal travelogue for my main characters. Basically, their experiences going through the expansion. So, 4 stories that it's going to be a big, huge piece of writing when it's all said and done. But besides that, just I'm always working to improve myself as a writer and looking into getting into different genres. Like, I'd love to start writing a novel now.
Yeah, novel writing is really kind of addictive in its own way. Even just the research for it can be a ton of fun. Before I got into novel writing and was kind of nudging out of the short story zone, one of the things that I really enjoyed was researching different genres,
Hmm.
and I found so many things that I didn't even know was out there. And a lot of it was really cool, and I was like, oh no, now I have to go read a whole bunch of books in this genre because I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
So I think, fandom in general, and especially like steampunk there for a while, really expanded. I didn't know there was an entire steampunk section to fantasy novel writing. So I'm excited now.
Hmm.
And I definitely have to pick a few more of those up.
Yeah, and you know what? You're not even wrong about that because when I first started getting into ghostwriting, mostly outlining, but sometimes actual writing, I didn't even know that Amish romances were a thing, but I've written a lot of those for ghostwriting, so I can't share the details.
Of
But
course.
just there were so many romance and mystery genres that I didn't even know existed until I started.
My mom is totally into those. You just wait until I tell her that I interviewed someone that wrote them. She's going to be very excited. She's going to pump me for all the details.
Oh boy, I'm in trouble now.
I know, right? Me too. What do you mean you read romance novels? I don't know what you're talking about. So, let's see. One thing you wish you knew before embarking on your most recent creative project, what would it be?
I wouldn't say my most recent, but the first novel that I self published was written over the course of 4 months when I was in between jobs. So I needed something to do to, let's be real, keep sane while I was looking for work.
Absolutely.
And editors are and first readers are a godsend because if I had an editor or at least a first reader to read it before I published it, a lot of the extraneous details would have been cut. I remember the first chapter had like 5 pages before it got to any kind of plot, and it was just a guy driving to work. Editors are a godsend.
Yeah, everybody needs that don't do that guy, so to speak.
Exactly.
You can cut these 25 pages. Nobody really cares what they had for breakfast. So,
Oh
yeah, for
man.
sure. I love the brutality of my editors. Like, I'm partially incensed by it, and then the other part of me goes, yeah, but they're right, Kale. It's time. You need to cut those
Pretty
15
much.
pages and save yourself the embarrassment.
Pretty much. It's why I've been super open about my writing again through the Patreon because when I know that people are watching, I'm a lot more careful about what I put in. So I will rewrite a section 3 or 4 times just to make sure that it flows real well.
Absolutely. And then, the other thing about having people get involved with your writing process is that it reminds everybody that, A, they're not alone in the writing process, because the creative
Hmm.
process can be really alienating. Like, everybody's right there with you, but you feel very alone in it, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But I think that that's fantastic that you're letting people experience the editorial process with you. I had one friend tell me when every time I have a novel come out, and usually the first edition, there's one or two things that got missed, and I'll always post errata. And they said, well, why do you do that? Because that just means you're admitting you're not perfect. And I said, no writer is perfect. You have to understand, you can always go back and change your manuscript, especially when you're self published. So
That's true.
in that vein, like, what advice would you give someone who wants to get into the creative scene, novel writing, and D&D? Like, how would you suggest that they get started?
This is going to sound the least helpful advice ever, but get started because you are not going to be at your best when you start D&D writing, DMing as a player, whatever. But when you get started, especially when you have a support group that will help you get through it, you'll get better over time and you'll find your niche. You'll find what you like. Um, as an example, I know that I've run into D&D groups where one player kept telling a player what the optimal options were, and they were not having a good time. Let them make their own mistakes. And it's the same thing with writing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's actually really good advice, because one of the biggest problems I encounter as a teacher and as a creative is people who say, gosh, I wish I could be good at this thing, and they're already actually
Hmm.
pretty good, but they weren't instantly good at it, so they just give up and don't try. And, sometimes
Hmm.
you just gotta suck at something for a while. As long as you're crappy but happy, right?
This is true.
And that's where you learn. So, like, you're not even, mom always used to repeat the old adage that basically it doesn't matter how many times you fail, because there's really no such thing as failure. You either learn, or you know what not to do again next time and you succeed. because like
That's
there's
true.
just there's no wrong, there's no failing, you know, like you either do really well and then there's still more to learn, or you make a mistake, but that's okay because you learned something from it. She was talking about quilting. That's like her favorite hobby in the whole world is quilting. And she said, the first quilts I made, some of them I screwed up so bad that the only thing I really took away from it was I will never make that mistake again because, oh wow, that was bad.
Oh man.
And yeah, I can't math at all. And I saw some of the math she does for those quilts, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this qualifies as rocket science. But anyway, enough about quilting. So,
Well, real quick though,
oh, sure.
it's funny that you mentioned teaching because I actually was a teacher myself as well. And one of the things I always told my students and is that I don't care if you agree with me. I want you to tell me why you believe the way you do, because when you can express yourself and when you're willing to make a statement, you even if you don't change my mind, you might expose me to a new way of looking at things. And that's why I feel it's so important for people to just, if you want to write, if you want to D&D, if you want to DM, just do it, because you might come across something new or you might expose someone to something new, and that's great.
I think that that's some really, really awesome advice. See, teachers have the best advice, don't they? Uh,
Yeah, they do. They do.
so, speaking of teaching, it seems like you have a lot of interaction with people and a lot of practice, letting people make their own mistakes and doing their own stuff. So that shows that you've got a lot of experience. You see, you had a 2-year fourth edition D&D campaign. What was that like for you? That's really impressive.
Okay, so first, let me go ahead and say it. Yes, fourth edition was really, really not the best edition. Okay, um, I know, I know. There are some things that I do like from fourth edition that I've carried forward. Like, I absolutely love the minion rolls and I like skill challenges, but spending 3 hours to fight goblins is not fun. That said, um, I enjoyed it. It was exciting because this was a setting that before the campaign even started, I was slowly detailing and writing on for about a year and a half, 2 years beforehand. So I knew the politics, I knew the big names of the setting. So it's like if I was one of the Forgotten Realms writers or the Dragon Riders or Pern writers, and I created a D&D campaign based on something on my baby for 2 years, it was just this really huge, exciting opportunity.
That's amazing. It's you went levels 1 to 30. What inspired a campaign that has that kind of span? I mean, that's some serious longevity there.
Well, the initial idea, and it's super unfortunate in today's climate, but the original idea was it was called The World of Saya, named after one of my friends from EverQuest 2. Um, Basically, it was a single continent that supposedly in ancient lore sacrificed the rest of the planet to protect itself from a disease that was being spread by beholders. And but there was one single focal point in this continent, in the center, that had a weak barrier. So beholders would keep popping up and spreading the disease. So they had to form a city watch basically around this entire city. Um, and but the catch of the setting was that it wasn't that they sacrificed the rest of the planet, it's that the rest of the planet sacrificed them and sent them off to the astral sea, like, not you deal with the disease, we don't want it. So the campaign was basically trying to reunite the planes, deal with the disease, and basically like rewrite history. And the players are really enthused, really excited about the concept, and so we stuck through from level 1 to 30 through fourth edition's nonsense.
Wow. So it looks like you kind of all got started together and had this tremendous journey. Other than telling young and inspiring DMs out there to let their players make their own mistakes and have their own experience, what other advice would you potentially give?
Never feel like you never feel married to your ideas. And what I mean by that is, if you have an NPC who's supposed to be this real big driving force and your players don't care about him, cut him. Give the role to someone else. Because ultimately, while yes, the DM has the right to have as much fun as the players do, the DM is ultimately there to entertain the players. You are the host. So if they're not feeling something, skip it and figure out what they are interested in.
So, that's really good advice. What do you think was the hardest part of running that campaign, and what was the best?
So easily, the answer to both are the same two characters, Jasper the Mage and Paymay the Mage, two of the players, because they were like the biggest Sherlock Holmes Batman duo I have ever experienced in my life. If I thought of a plan like, okay, this is going to really trip them up, this is going to be really surprising, they will bring something up from like 12 sessions prior that I gave them and forgot about to solve the problem in an instant. So literally, it became this cartoon nemesis thing where I would go to my session like, "All right, I got those bastards this time," and then I would come back home like, "Oh, they got me again, Gadget. Next time."
That's brilliant. I love it. It's always amazing when things grow and change and your players and your characters have that kind of growth, and like you think you've got it, you think you've got them cornered, and you're like, there's no getting out of this, it's over now. And then no, they think their way out of it, they MacGyver the whole thing, and you're just like, and this is
Pretty
why I
much.
do what I do.
Yeah, I love being surprised, which is why DMing is such a thrill for me because when you get some really creative players that will surprise you every time, it's such a thrill just saying, "All right, how are you going to solve this problem?"
So obviously you have your players who were brilliant. I mean, there's no way you're carrying a campaign that long without really awesome, support system and your players. But like, what other support systems do you have for that creativity, and where do you harness that creativity from?
I'd say fellow DMs and fellow players in other campaigns. Admittedly, I didn't have that at the time because I pretty much stuck with the same group of players. But now, thanks to Discord and World of Warcraft and Twitter, I can talk to other DMs and other players to bounce ideas off them, share war stories, and it's a lot of fun. And they point out things that I might miss, and same thing I do for them.
Awesome. So I'm blown away. I'm still stuck on the fact that like you took a campaign for 2 years from 1 to 30. I don't know very many people who have done that, and I didn't play for very long. I was like early '90s, played a couple of games, but I've been surrounded my whole life by people who absolutely love D&D, and I don't know that many. So um, congrats on that again. And it looks like somebody else acknowledged how awesome that is because you've written for Knights of the Dinner Table magazine. That's a really exciting opportunity. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience?
So, KODT, Knights of the Table, is a really funny magazine. It's probably the first D&D comic that I've read. Um, and if you like D&D or if you like D&D tropes, it's a highly recommended read. You can see more at kenzerco.com. I believe that's the website.
Yep.
But as far as that, I remember I was looking for some back issues because they had released an anthology, and I was looking at their website and I noticed, hey, they're taking submissions for articles. So I gave it a shot, and they accepted some of my articles. So I wrote about, um, I want to say wrote for 10 to 12 different issues.
Wow, 10 to 12 issues. Now, like, how exactly did you integrate your writing into what they did? Was that, were you writing articles specifically? Were you writing dialogue? How did you get involved in that?
Mostly it was articles, adventure prompts, magical item descriptions, and DM advice pieces. So I didn't write many stories for them, but I tried, especially with the magic items. I gave my magic items like small backstories so I could leverage that background in storytelling.
Fantastic. What do you think was the article that you liked writing about best? Is it going to be like the adventure prompts, or did you have something that was even more fun?
There were two articles that I remember liking the most that I still remember them to this day. Um, One of them was Four Clerics Walk into a Bar, basically a DM advice article about what to do if you have a super lopsided party. That one was based on like a little pet project that I've always wanted to do but never got the chance to, where everyone plays the same class, and we run a campaign with that. Um, the other article was a magic item description. Basically, it was like a toy soldier that could be thrown on the ground and it would expand to like a golem that would fight for you.
Oh, that's awesome. Very, very neat. So, what was probably the biggest motivation when you were writing for Knights of the Dinner Table? Like you have such great ideas and they're really grounded too, which I like. It's not just so ethereal that it doesn't always make sense. Like you really have a great grasp, especially like when you're doing your item description. What feeds that? What's the motivation and inspiration? Is that the players, or do you have real life, just physical, experiences where you're like, I could do something else with that fork?
A little bit of A, a little bit of B. I like giving new things for my players to do. Like I remember when I used to run Exalted, going to the trouble of taking all of the robot mastery abilities from Mega Man 2 and turning that into a martial arts style. I'm sure if I look hard enough, I can find it, but I don't want to.
Fair enough.
But as far as real life goes, admittedly, one of the motivators for that is that my growing up, my household was very rigid. Coffee at this time of the day, dinner at this time of the day, lunch at this time of the day, da 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 da. I'm not a routine type person, so giving myself the opportunity to come up with something crazy and wild helps break me out of that doldrum boredom shell.
So, being not a routine person, now I'm deeply curious because I know you have next kind of on your life goals the whole novel writing thing on your plate, and that you're really exploring it. What do you have going as far as a writing routine for novel work?
So my routine right now, whenever I'm doing any kind of writing, is to put on some music, usually lo-fi or whatever soundtrack is really catching my attention that day. Closing the door, basically drowning out all my noise,
Hmm.
and working at it. Sometimes taking a pause to do something else just to refresh myself. Because I'll admit, since I'm not a very routine based person, sticking to a schedule can be hard. So that's something that I've worked very, very hard over the years to try to overcome.
You know what? I think that's fair because, I mean, all creatives have to approach it from a way that works for them. Some people really like to set schedules, others like just wilt when you present them with, a schedule you must do between A and
So
B
true.
PM, 10,000 words. Um, so I think it's really exciting to see you digging into this growth phase in your life and taking that creativity a step further into novel writing. What genre do you think you're most excited to try your hand at?
Fantasy and romance are the obvious ones, especially if you look at the writing I do that I post on Twitter and Kofi. But I've also been super interested in doing mystery or noir.
Okay.
Like, I'm a huge, huge fan of detective fiction, I'll admit. Um, Part of me would like to do science fiction, but I'll admit that because I'm not technically trained, I don't know technology enough to really do it justice. So it would be more science fantasy, really.
I was to
Star
say,
Wars rather than Star Trek.
yeah, I was gonna say, or go the ever popular apparently steampunk route for that if you're gonna do noir.
That's true.
That's always an option because my friend always used to joke that steampunk ran on the power of BS. I mean Steam. So, do you have any self education processes for what you're undertaking? Like, I never want to sound like I'm saying like you have to go to college to be a writer because you don't. But do you have any ways that you really seek that knowledge? Do you like occasionally hit up free classes or just research on your own?
I'd say there are lots of classes, free ones included, that are available online. A lot of articles that you can read about DMing or writing or novels. Um, there are quite a few that I pay attention to. Let me see, I'm trying to remember. It's not so much for novels, but I listen to Jordan McHale a lot for business writing, since I'm basically trying to turn my writing into a business. But the basic point is figure out like what you're interested in, and make use of the resources that you have. Because since we have the internet, since we have YouTube, there are a wealth of resources that you don't really have to pay a dime for to get you started. Professional classes do help as well. Certain college courses can help as well, but don't feel like you have to do something just to, or better way to say that, don't feel like you have to take any particular course. Find the course that's best for you and stick to it.
It's good advice. Have you done any research into or considered participating words today in NaNoWriMo?
Honestly, I've been doing NaNoWriMo, however it's pronounced, for
Yeah,
about
me
six
neither. I don't
years
know.
now. Whatever. But I've actually been doing NaNoWriMo for about 5 or 6 years. In fact, the first novel I published was a NaNoWriMo project, the one that really needed an editor, but let's move on.
I feel that.
Um, Besides that, this is actually the first year I didn't participate, and that's because, let's be real, 2020 was a dumpster fire. So we're
That's
just
putting
doing the
it
best we
gently.
can.
That's putting it very gently. But yeah, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna hit you up because I need another Nano Buddy. I don't know if I'm gonna drag it through this month. It might have to be next month, just because this is always the busiest time of year for me, especially as an illustrator. Like the work really comes in, which is good. But trying to balance writing two novels at the same time and a full time job is a little hefty. So I will. I find you very inspiring. I will like. I will check you out definitely.
Would be happy to.
Now I know you've mentioned Brian Jacques. I'm not sure. I'm sure you've got it right. It's probably Brian Jakes. I know he inspired you quite a lot, but is there any other published or self-published authors that really like get you going? Because like I know you mentioned like the Pern series by Anne McCaffrey, and that was my big jam because, as you can tell, I love dragons, so like that was huge.
Well, when I was first starting out with writing, like when I was really seriously starting to write in middle school, I read a lot of Brian Jakes, Tolkien, of course. Let me see who else. The last, what was it? The last Harold Mage series. Why can't I remember the author's name? Well,
It's alright. I can't remember it either, so you're doing okay. So the
yeah,
last
there's
hero mage.
the last Harold Mage series. I also read a lot of Mercedes Lackey, um,
Yeah, I love
and
Mercedes. She's awesome.
yeah, Mercedes Lackey, and the Mercy Thompson series. But as far as like technical side of writing, um, I make it a point in January every year to read Stephen King's On Writing, because it's a memoir and it's an advice book for writing, and it's entertaining and it's good advice. But I've recently started reading Naked Drunken Writing, which is, yeah, I know it's based around memoirs mostly, but it's really good writing that expresses that you should get out of your shell and just do it. Like, one of the things that I really liked about that was discussing like um, finding a writing buddy and write something every day to each other. So that way you are, because that deadline, that expectation of I gotta give content to this person is really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, when I was having more free time to write, RP was a huge part of my day, even before I would start working on my novels or any manuscripts I had out. I would grab my RP buddy and make sure that they got a reply post because that just really motivated me and it kind of got the gears turning, got me into that mode of, okay, now we're going to write. And so that is absolutely fabulous advice. And I have not read that book by Stephen King, but it has been suggested to me. And I always, every time I listen to him talk, I always really find him inspiring as another writer. So yeah, I'm going to actually have to pick that book up and give it a read. Um,
Yeah, I definitely like it. And it's funny that you mentioned like RP posts. Um, that's something that I want to do better with because there are a lot of really creative writers in the RP community, both through World of Warcraft and through other games and fandoms. And any storyline that I have with them, um, it's always so motivating to be able to write and add to that storyline, that collective storytelling that we build. So if you have a writing buddy, I would definitely say follow through with them. Do even if it's just one post a day, do one post a day.
I think that's really good advice. So, last but not least at all, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like, where are your hopes and dreams for the future other than surviving 2020? Because, speaking of dumpster fires,
Okay, so the cheesy answer is to say married to my girlfriend, but as a writer, what I hope to do is to have a few good novels under my belt and maybe get back into writing for Knights of Dinner Table magazine because I really enjoyed writing for them. But overall, I just want to be known as a really positive and inspiring writer. I want people to look at me as an example of someone that not only creates good content, but also helps people become better themselves because that's really just awesome to do.
it is, and it's some great goals. Obviously, bettering yourself is good, but then whenever somebody can look in and say, if they can better themselves, I can too. There's a lot of magic in that. There's a lot of power in the good in people, and very often we forget about that. It's something I try to nudge into my writing every so often, because that's just a very underrated concept in life that there's still some good left in humanity, but there is, and we have tremendous power as creators ourselves, and I think that that's overlooked. So great goals. That is just absolutely fantastic to hear. Um, so thank you for joining us today and sharing your experiences with us. But before you go, would you like to give our listeners one piece of inspirational advice? Like if you can tell a young novelist, a dungeon master, any tabletop gamers, if you could leave us with one thought, what would that be?
I would love to. And the first thought that comes to mind is never stop trying. Because even if you are not as good as this person, even if you're not as good as that person, even if you look at your follower count on Twitter and say, oh, I don't have as much as I think I should, excuse me, as I think I should, then don't stop. Keep going because you will continue to grow, you will continue to advance, and you'll find your niche, your place. And your place is the best place for you.
I think that that's really amazing. So never stop trying. I'm actually, I'm tempted to pin that to my wall. So we very much appreciate your time today, and our listeners. So we're going to encourage them to stay tuned for some more podcasts here at Myth Rights. And I just want to thank you again. This has been a tremendous experience for me, and I think you've been a lot of fun to interview. And I think our listeners are really going to appreciate it too. So thank you
Awesome.
so much.
And thank you for having me. And I was really excited to take part in this interview. And I'm hoping and looking forward to hearing more. So keep up the great work.
Thanks so much.